Number 3, can my salvation be jeopardized by the decisions I make? And what would that look like?
It's an interesting question, and let me tell you, in one of the people whose feet that I sit at, let me give you their answer rather than mine at this point, because it doesn't work into my theology, because my theology is only intermediary. You know, it's intermediate type theology. It's not really university level theology. But in what I have been taught, it has been is that any sin that is not confessed, there is no place in the Bible that you can prove that that sin has been forgiven. That's what I have been told. So the whole idea is that before God, you cleanse your conscience before God. So can a person's salvation be jeopardized by the decisions you make? It kind of depends on which side of your salvation that is. If you made bad decisions previous to you and horrible decisions previous to you really making a commitment to Christ, because in the church, there are a number of kids that have grown up that actually were kind of coerced into a relationship with God that wasn't a relationship with God at all. It was a relationship with their mama's religion. You know, so that relationship with God, and that's why I talk to you guys quite a bit about that. The greatest endeavor that you have is to be able to make sure that your children's hands are in the hands of Jesus. They're not in your hands thinking that they are. I'll give you an example. Up in our church up north, Jacques, why don't you come here and talk about that for a second? Jacques and I spoke about that today, about salvation of someone that had been kind of close to this situation.
I just want to repeat.
Yeah, what we talked about today. Yeah,
there was this guy that
we were asked to meet with this guy. He had been away from the Lord, and so upon our entrance, they saw the authenticity and the genuine nature by which we conducted ourselves, and said, you know, I think I'm ready to do something about it.
So actually, his family was really excited, because for once again, every year and a half or so, he comes around. You know, those people that kind of backslide for a year and a half, and they come to one altar call, and then everybody's excited, and then they're gone again. But everybody believes that they're actually saved. And so his family was telling me he's really saved. He just really needs some encouragement. And so I got to meet with a guy, and his family wanted me to encourage him to no longer live with his girlfriend, to get off of crack, cocaine, to stop partying on Saturday nights because he drinks. He's a heavy drinker. So I basically came to him with a question, with this verse where, we always have this thing that we say we are sure of our salvation. I said, well, the problem is Jesus proved that the guys that were sure of their salvations were the ones that weren't saved. Because they said, but Lord, in that day, they'll say, Lord, Lord, did we not cast out demons? Did we not do this, that, and the other? They were completely sure that they were saved, only to find out that they weren't. I said, so, I can sit here with you for 2 hours and try and twist your arm to convince you to break up with this girl, to convince you to drink less, to convince you to not do that much crack, to convince you to go to church.
Yeah, just have a little crack. Just do a little.
And so wean you off a crack. So wean you off. So I said, but that doesn't really matter, because a lot of people who don't do crack still go to hell. So really the point that we have to come to is where you actually no longer commit yourself to God every 2.5 years or so, but really surrender your life to God, because to commit is partial, but surrender is complete. And so you have to come to the place where you completely surrender your life to God, and then let's talk about stuff. Then we'll talk about relationships. Then we'll talk about how much crack. And so, but up to that point, it doesn't really matter. So he says, man, I got to go, and man, I got to give my life to Jesus. I said, yeah. You thought you received Jesus, but at this point in time, you're coming to a realization that it's not about receiving Christ and adding Him to your life. It's about giving your life to Him. And so, you know, one of the family members came on Sunday like, how did the meeting go?
Was his grandmother. You got to watch out for grandmas.
Yeah.
Grandmas always try to tell kids they're saved. Oh, you're saved, honey.
Yeah.
You're saved. No, I ain't saved.
So his family member came like, how did it go? And I said, oh, it went wonderful. So what happened? I said, well, I basically told him he's not saved. She goes, no, he is. I told him he is saved.
And I said, just have a look at your hands and find out if you got holes. If you got holes, then you can say that. And if you don't, that's it. See, so can your salvation be jeopardized by the decisions you make? The decisions that you make, people make mistakes, and that's why 1 John 1:9 is there. There's no question about that. But if decisions are habitual, all of us make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I think that my name is actually written in the dictionary under stupid. You know, I'm pretty convinced of that for people that have done silly things, I've done some silly things in my life. And if it's a habitual situation, then I would question whether or not that you really have made the commitment to Christ. If you occasionally make a challenge, that you cause challenges in life, what you need to do is make sure that you change your environment, change the people that you're around. And you can do it because if you pray and you ask God, God will take you out of that environment. He will. Don't say, well, you know, my environment's bad. Simple. Don't go there. It's much simpler than you think. Well, yeah, but it's the neighborhood I live in. Lock the door. Make the neighborhood in your own bedroom. Even if that's the only neighborhood that you see for a while. Jesus will give you a new neighborhood. But don't use your neighborhood as a reason. Because you just give your heart. Once you give your heart, Jesus will take care of the rest. He'll take care of it. He loves you more than you love Him. He loves you more than you love Him. There's no question. So what would that look like? Jeopardized by the decisions you make. I think that's kind of an an unfair question, I'll say it like that, because salvation and jeopardized by decisions. I would really love to believe, and this is my own thing, I would really love to believe that once saved, always saved is true. And that is that once you really commit yourself and you surrender to Jesus, you don't walk away anymore. But if you do, the Bible says you have an advocate with the Father, the righteous Jesus Christ. Understood? So living on both sides, you know, saved today, lost tomorrow, you know, that whole thing has given birth to a whole generation of individuals who believe that the grace of God becomes the doorway by which that they can live the way that they are and still walk into church and have absolutely no difference of lifestyle.